Hello and welcome to the Deep Dive Perspective. I have Scott Ritter in the studio with me. Scott, of course, you know, is a military analyst par excellence and also a former weapons inspector for the United Nations. He's going to unpack for us the Memorandum of Understanding, the supposed agreement that is emerging, which is toing and froing, which has given the world hope that there could be peace, that the Hormuz Strait could be opened. But is this a false dawn? Is this just more games from Israel and Donald Trump trying to buy time for the midterm elections? Welcome to the show, Scott.
Well, thanks for having me. I hope I'm up to the task.
Yeah, I want your take on what's gone on since you predicted that all these wars were going to happen, and they did happen. What do you see now emerging with these new developments?
Well, first of all, just reemphasize something I've said and something that Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said, that the United States under Donald Trump is agreement incapable. So this memorandum of understanding it's just never going to succeed because the United States is incapable of allowing this document to succeed. The memorandum is a facade. It's an act of political desperation brought about by the need by President Trump to be seen as opening up the Strait of Hormuz and getting oil to flow. But, when I first read it, I said, none of the tough issues are addressed in the Memorandum of Understanding. Everything's put off for 60 days of consultations. The United States on Iran's nuclear program. Trump still believes that somehow American troops are going to be on the ground in Isfahan digging this stuff out and taking it away, that the Iranians might be there to help us dig it out, but it's going to be done under American supervision. The Iranians have said no. Now, there's nothing that's going to happen in 60 days of negotiations. You're going to get Iran to change its stance. And President Trump, having committed to something like this, has backed himself into a political corner. For him to say, okay, we're going to go with what the Iranians say is a sign of political defeat on the eve of midterm elections, that he has to somehow create the perception he's a strong leader. The same thing with reparations, or the same thing with the unfreezing of assets. There's two issues there. One is that there's many people in the Trump administration that just don't want to do this. It's they accuse Barack Obama of handing billions to the Ayatollah to build missiles. Oh, there's another thing. After we said that Iran must dismantle its missile program, it's not even raised in the Memorandum of Understanding. But I can guarantee you that in the 60 days of negotiations, we're going to try to inject it in there, because it is a core belief that the Trump administration had committed to, that Iran must be disarmed of ballistic missiles. It's something that Israel insists on, and yet it's not there because Iran dug its heels in and said, you didn't beat us, so therefore we're not going to concede a negotiating table that which you couldn't get accomplish at the in the battlefield. Across the board, even to the Strait of Hormuz, the ability of Iran to charge tariffs or surcharges or environmental tax, whatever you want to call it, the United States is saying absolutely not, isn't going to happen. Well, it is happening. It's going to happen, and not so. I've always said that I believe that these 60 days are the kiss of death for this deal, and that the best thing that's going to come out of this is that we'll get a situation where the Strait of Hormuz will be allowed to remain open, but other aspects of this deal aren't going to be finalized. That the United States is never going to hand over the money in totality to Iran. There won't be a blockade. The Strait of Hormuz will be open, but nothing else is going to be accomplished. In the nuclear field, the demands that UN or IEA inspectors come back in to do what? You have to address what is the framework to inspect a Iranian nuclear program, inclusive of enrichment to 3.5. How much material can be held on? The United States was saying zero. You got to get rid of it all. Now there seems to be some softening, but you can't be too soft. But the thing that is going to kill it even sooner than this, and I noted it the moment I read it, I think it's the first article of the MOU, that you don't make any threats, that the MOU exists, and that the period of negotiation has to be a period of mutual respect, where you sit down and with a mediator and a moderator and whatever, you work with each other respectfully to try to achieve an outcome that will be embraced by all parties. Donald Trump is incapable of doing this. Look at what happened right off the bat when the Iranians started to balk at some of the demands. He said, if you don't do it, I'm going to blow you away. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to murder you. I'm going to slaughter you. I'm going to kill your guys before they go back to Iran. Well, I mean, that's a violation of the MOU right off the bat. The United States is agreement incapable. This is a reality that people need to understand. Russia's come to that understanding, and I think the Iranians have as well. I don't think that this process is going to end with a treaty that's been ratified by the United States Senate, sent to the Security Council with a Security Council resolution, because the United States is incapable of producing such a document.
So why do you think, from the Iranian side, why did they even bother to take the American signal that they were going to consider these 14 points, etc., seriously? Do you think they did it because they need to replenish their own military arsenal? Did Donald Trump do it because they need to tool up again because they're short of missiles? What's the real major reason that they've even gone into this negotiation, do you think?
I think it comes down to the economy. James Carville's warning to Bill Clinton in 1992 to avoid complicated foreign policy discussions. It's the economy, stupid. That's the only thing the American people care about. And that's the truth. It's the economy, stupid. We needed to have the Strait of Hormuz opened up so that oil's flowing, so that this energy crisis is going to still impact no matter what happens. We're in for a tough time in the weeks ahead. We can, what Trump needs is sometime around August or September to be turning the tide of this, so that come midterms, he can say, look what I've done. I'm the great leader. I've saved the world. I've saved America. I've saved everybody. But in order to do that, oil needs to be flowing out of the Strait of Hormuz. So this is what's motivating Donald Trump, is that, the American people, as long as the oil flows, that's a political victory for Donald Trump. So
that's interesting. That is an interest. Let's stay with this economic factor, because that would please China. It would please all of South Asia, which had its oil cut off. It would please the Europeans probably as well, although they weren't reliant totally on that Hormuz Strait. I think they've got other avenues, and they were buying American shale oil, etc., or gas or whatever. So there was a lot of profit that America began to make. I think they were getting rid of all those tanker loads of excess oil, which is 3 times the price of crude that was coming out of this side. So you could see that they could sell this stuff to Europe and make some money back. So I could see that in the short term, the US was prospering as well to some extent. But in the long term, it would have hit everyone, and it would have hit the Americans. That calculation now, from Iran's point of view, if America continues to sanction 360-degree full spectrum sanctions, as they've been doing and increasing them more and more, if America then continues to choose to do the same policy it had prior to February this year, when all this war business kicked off, that's essentially where we're going to go back to if this MOU doesn't work out. Hormuz back open, as you're saying, but actually we'll be back at that exact point where we were before Israel attacked in the first instance. So given that scenario, I could see the rest of the world having the noose loosened around its neck in terms of trade and oil, inflation, and all those kind of things that were going to result from an excessively long closure of the Hormuz. It benefits Iran as well, because they can get their oil out. But if the US goes back to sanctioning Iranian oil, then we're in a situation where, what has Iran gained out of it, to be honest? And what's America's next step? And what will Israel do about all this? Is it back to more war?
I mean, war is always a potential, but I think the fact is Iran won the war. And there's nothing Israel and the United States have in their respective, hand of cards that indicate they can get a better outcome. The United States has run out of precision-guided munitions. We don't have any. It's a big problem. There's an emergency meeting right now to get defense industry up and running to produce it. It's a huge problem for the United States. The other thing you have to understand is that Iran can squeeze the Strait of Hormuz anytime it wants to, and so the United States has to. This isn't a one-way street where the Strait of Hormuz is open and Iran gets nothing. the United States is going to have to, and you see it with these sanction waivers that are taking place now. People at the courts have already suggested that Donald Trump has, overreached here, and that he lacks the legal authority in the United States to lift these sanctions in their totality. That Congress has to weigh in at some point in time. But the bottom line is that Congress is not an enforcement agency. The Department of Treasury is an enforcement agency. The Department of Justice is an enforcement agency. And if the president continues to do waivers, Iran will sell its oil, and then China's happy, India's happy, everybody's happy, and Iran's happy. As long as you don't get a return to full-scale war, I think what's in it for Iran is the ability to get their economy up and running to the degree that it can be. You're not going to get Western investments. I mean, that would require, full implementation and opening up of the Iranian economy. I think instead Iran is going to be focused on engaging effectively with BRICS, with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, with the European Economic Union. And when they do this, I think what you're going to find is that they become unsanctionable. Once Iran becomes fully integrated into, the greater BRICS framework, a Shanghai Cooperation Organization framework, they will achieve a level of immunity because now their economy will link to nations that aren't Europe, aren't the United States, and that can operate effectively outside of the framework of control that America used to impose on everybody. Why did China basically tell Scott Bessent to pound sand when he threatened secondary sanctions against any Chinese refinery that received Iranian oil? Because China is at the point right now where they can say that. The United States has lost the ability to leverage economic threats over China. Russia has made itself sanctions immune in a similar fashion. And so if Iran can plug into that system, what the United States does with sanctions simply doesn't matter anymore. And again, in the past, this would lead us down the path towards war. But the interesting thing about this 37-day war is that the threat of American military intervention is no longer holds the fear invoking power that it once did. Iran has ridden out the best that Israel and the United States can throw at it, and emerged, survived and emerged victorious. There's the United States short of a nuclear intervention. There's nothing the United States can do that would change, the outcome that's already happened. So there's no more threatening, where the Iranians go, oh no, we want to make sure the United States doesn't attack us again, because Iran has the magic bullet right now. They'll just squeeze the Strait of Hormuz, maybe get Ansarallah to squeeze the
yes,
and that's the end. When you can't get the oil out of those two straits, that's the end of it.
And Israel, in terms of its leverage, I mean, it seems to be its tactic was get the US to come and do our dirty work for us directly. They're still talking in Congress about the idea of merging the US and IDF forces. I don't know how logical that is and whether that's any different from what it is now. But everything from their point of view seems to be, let's keep the US engaged. Do you think that they'll, as they have done with Lebanon during even these negotiations, do you think they'll continue being the belligerent that they've been and provoking and trying to get reactions, and therefore in those reactions, America then still has to stay engaged and get drawn back into military action, even though maybe it doesn't want to, or it can't necessarily because of its public pressure?
Well, first of all, there's no doubt that pro-Israeli elements have, deep the ability to influence greatly American policy. The Trump administration has built one of the most pro-Israeli cabinets imaginable. And for the first time, an American president yielded to the, requests of Benjamin Netanyahu, the insistence of Benjamin Netanyahu to participate in a direct attack against Iran. This is something that every American president going back to, Bill Clinton refused to do. But Trump did this. And I think this turns out to be a fatal mistake for Israel because there's really nothing more the United States can do. And now we go back to James Carville's "It's the economy, stupid."
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
the Israelis, bought Congress. They openly bragged about it. $100 million in the 2024 election to buy Congress, $30 million to buy Representative Massey's seat in Kentucky. And so, money is important, but that money it goes into a political cycle that doesn't benefit the broad base of the American public. What does? Oil, price of oil, Strait of Hormuz. It's the economy, stupid. And right now, Donald Trump recognizes that he will lose all political viability if Israel continues the policy track they're on.
Right.
And so I think we're looking at a potential big break with Israel. And this is something that Benjamin Netanyahu has acknowledged. He has openly said that Israel needs to decouple itself financially from the United States within
Right.
10 years and look for alternatives. I think that he's going to find that the timeline is much shorter, that he's pushed a man, Donald Trump, who simply cares more about his political legacy than he does about the state of Israel. And he's pushed Donald Trump into a corner where come November, if Trump can't perform a miracle and pull a political rabbit out of the hat, not only is he going to lose the House and therefore become nonstop impeachment hearings for the rest of his 2 years in office, he may lose the Senate. And then there's the threat of conviction that looms over him. And along with that means that at the end of his 2 years, everything that he's worked for his entire life will be dismantled. The Trump legacy, the name brand of Trump, will not be the gold standard that he wants it to be. It'll actually you'll be seeing all the monuments torn down. Donald Trump's name will be erased. And this is the reality that he faces. And so if Israel believes that they can pressure Donald Trump into sacrificing his political legacy for the suicidal policies of Benjamin Netanyahu, it's absurd. Israel can't win in Lebanon. They can terrorize people, and they've been very successful at that, but they can't beat Hezbollah. They've proven that. And we're at a situation right now where Netanyahu has, basically to quote Top Gun, his ego has, written checks that the Israeli body can't cash, and he's bankrupt. And I think we're looking at the final moments of Benjamin Netanyahu. Unfortunately, they may be, extremely violent moments.
That's fascinating. Some very brave predictions. Not many people like making predictions, but I always love when you're so frank and you come out with it. Now, the thing that I got to bring in is that the satellites of the Zionist empire, they were trying to go for this. Many would say this Pax Judaica, Greater Israel, and using Saudi Arabia, Jordan, even Syria now, many would argue. Of course, Egypt has been tamed for a very long time. And you could bring in all the Gulf monarchies into the equation, but particularly the United Arab Emirates, who've all been gung-ho with them. But those partners, especially the Gulf monarchies, they've been dealt a pretty hefty blow by the Iranians. One of the things that surprised the US in terms of the tactics that Iran used this time was that Iran went for their bases, but they also went for the Gulf monarchies, made it clear that they would be responsible. Has that changed the considerations of even Benjamin Netanyahu, because he would have relied on these Zio Arabs, I call them, as a buffer zone to continue being his support base. And indeed, many would argue that America didn't defend any of those nations. They saved all their missiles for defending Tel Aviv, and even that didn't seem to do a great job. Give me your take on where this crowd will go, the Qatari monarchs, the Saudis. What are they thinking now?
Well, the United States goal and objective has been for some time now to create a world where you have the Shia Crescent, the axis of resistance, faced off against a Sunni counter crescent, and that we would use this Sunni Shia struggle to unify a Sunni base, to get them to buy into the American defense industry enterprise, to buy their weapons, And then to create this shield that then would need an economic hub that's beyond oil, and this is where Israel came in. I found it fascinating. You see this play out with the Abrams Accords, the notion that Israel would become aligned economically with various nations in the Gulf Arab region, until you had common economic interaction. Some people thought that was pie in the sky, but
Right.
it may be heavy. But I go back to September of 2023 when Joe Biden at the G20 summit in India came out and spoke about the India, Middle East, European Economic Corridor. And Benjamin Netanyahu came out that day. I forget the day. It might have been September 12th, 13th, around that time period. And he gave a very important speech that nobody pays attention to anymore.
Right.
And he said that this is the most important day in modern Israeli history. I'm not making it up.
Okay.
That's the words. The most important day in modern Israeli history, because this announcement of Middle East, India, Middle East, European Economic Corridor positioned Israel to become an economic superpower.
Right.
And in doing so, Israel would now become not just a partner, but the dominant partner of a new Middle Eastern reality that would allow Israel to liberate itself from its from its need on American economic systems.
Yeah, to become a primal power. Yeah, yeah.
100%. And this was the goal, the ambition. Now today that's dead. The Abrams Accords are finished. Saudi Arabia has linked their any potential involvement to a resolution of the Gaza crisis, which Israel under Benjamin Netanyahu is incapable of implementing, and the Trump administration is incapable of separating itself from Israel on Gaza. So the Abrams Accords dead. There will be no Middle Eastern, India, Middle Eastern, European Economic Corridor. All that's left now is some residual hope that Israel can strike a relationship with the United Arab Emirates, which appears to be the one state that is aligned with Israel today. They allowed Israeli forces operate on their soil. Prime ministers made visits. They decoupled from OPEC Plus in a way to tighten their economic relations with Israel. But the rest of the Gulf Arab states, I think, understand that everything they had bought into, this Sunni Crescent, Shia Crescent conflict that the United States imposed on them was a falsehood, was a false narrative, that the United States was proven incapable of coming to their defense, and that going forward, it's not about resurrecting this conflict, but to find a more realistic alternative, which I think will come down to it's the economy, stupid. Yeah. In order to keep their energy flowing to markets, many of which are shared markets with Iran's energy, they need peace and stability. The Chinese were experts at this. They're the ones that brokered the rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran that the United States was dead set against, and so was Israel. But the Chinese were taking more of an economic role. Russia has a heavy economic motivation here with the North-South economic corridor. And also, Russia's, economic future linked to BRICS. If Iran is able to inject itself in BRICS and remember, Saudi Arabia was led to the door, so was the United Arab Emirates, and bring the Middle East nations with them, you could be looking at, the potential of an economic revival, independent of the necessity of billions of dollars of investment into American defense industry that turned out to be little more than a paper tiger.
Well, so much is changing and so rapidly, but you're amazing how you keep up with all of it. Sometimes I completely get lost, but yes, we've come to the conclusion, the end of the show, but de-dollarization was already beginning to happen. I dare say what's happening now, it's the economy stupid. One of the first things that I see is the continued de-dollarization process, people beginning to deal with the yuan, China taking advantage of of the vulnerability and weaknesses that have opened up because of this war, the fissures. And it's also interesting to note that the likes of Larry Fink and BlackRock and the other major investment outfits around the world are already very heavily rooting with China for China, and Russia is absolutely embedded with China in so many ways. Economically, they're accelerating their union. So your analysis makes a lot of sense to me, in the sense that there's an already a drift towards multipolarity, whether America likes it or not, and that whole idea of a sort of a singular hegemonic power or a Pax Judaica emerging, or division between the Americans taking the Western Hemisphere, withdrawing to the West Hemisphere, and Israel acting as the controller of this central hemisphere as well. It does look a little bit like it's in tatters. So I'm inclined to agree with you, but what do I know? Thank you so much, Scott. We'd love to have you back again and again. You've done a fantastic job. I hope it's not as hot as it is in London. We're sweltering here at the moment. So, but we'll look forward to the next time we can bring you back to educate us on the possibilities and the realities of what's going on. It's a difficult one to make sense of, but you've helped us. Thank you so much, Scott.
Thank you for having me.
And that's it. That's all for today on Deep Dive Perspective. We would like you to like, share, subscribe. Also, do that for Scott, please. Scott, where can we find you? What is your main place where people should tag in? Everybody knows you already, but I'm going to plug you anyway.
Well, thank you. If you go to scottritter.com, that will take you to my Substack page, Real Scott Ritter, and there on the page. It's a free subscription. You don't have to pay. If you want to subscribe, a paid subscription, thank you. But I don't put the vast majority of my stuff is not behind a paywall. That's where all my interviews go, the articles I write, things of that nature. There's tabs on the top. I'm also, a fully independent journalist. I just finished a 22-day trip to Russia that I paid for entirely based upon donations that people provide. And so there's also a donate button there. That's what allows me to do the work I'm doing. But go to scottritter.com. It'll take you to the Substack page, and you'll find all the stuff I do there.
Well, you've given me the hint for the next education that's going to be on Russia. You've spent time there, and I've never talked to you about in detail about Russia. I've not talked about China in detail as well, but it would be fascinating to get your take on it at some point when you have time. I know you're very, very busy, but do please plug in to Scott, back him up, support him, because it's these voices that actually give us the alternative from mainstream media. You know they're lying. You know they're not going to give you the absolute truth. They're tied into financial interests. The likes of Scott, etc., are independent, and they are not tied in. Therefore, they do real journalism, the real research, as we do here at Deep Dive in our own little humble way. We're a new outfit, but we're trying to do our best to bring these powerful voices to you who will educate you about the realities. Thank you. Once again, Scott Ritter, thank you for watching. Do like, share, subscribe to Deep Dive Perspective as well. Goodbye.